Nancy Barbato gave Frank Sinatra everything. She stood beside him before the fame arrived, raised his children while he chased the spotlight, and forgave things that most people would have walked away from without a second thought. For years, she absorbed it all quietly. The humiliations, the betrayals, the public embarrassments that kept coming one after another. But what Frank ultimately did to her went beyond ordinary cruelty. It was calculated, repeated, and completely without remorse. And once the full picture comes together, it becomes very difficult to separate the legend from the man who made her life unbearable. The dark secrets behind Sinatra's childhood. Frank Sinatra's story began with a fight for survival. When he entered the world, the delivery room was pure chaos. He was born blue, completely breathless, and barely alive. The delivery had been so difficult that doctors had to use forceps to pull him out by the head. At first, they believed the newborn was dead. They laid him on a table and turned their attention to saving his mother. But Sinatra's grandmother refused to accept that he was gone. She grabbed the baby and rushed him under a stream of freezing cold water. Somehow, it worked. The newborn suddenly came back to life, but that traumatic birth left its mark. The forceps damaged the side of his face, leaving a scar that would become one of Sinatra's lifelong insecurities. His parents were both Italian immigrants who had come to America when they were young, and neither lived an ordinary life. His father, Anthony Martin Sinatra, was a lightweight boxer who fought under the name Marty O'Brien. His mother, Dolly, worked as a midwife, but Dolly was also rumored to have another, far more dangerous side. According to accounts that later emerged from the family and others who knew her, she was involved in an underground abortion operation that helped local Italian Catholic women who had become pregnant and had nowhere else to turn. Sinatra's difficult start in life didn't end with the scars on his face. He also suffered from a damaged eardrum, and childhood surgery left him with more visible damage. Then came his teenage years, when a severe case of acne covered his face with permanent pockmarks. His classmates noticed every one of them. They cruelly called him Scarface. For a young boy already struggling with his appearance, it was brutal. But Sinatra had a way of turning humiliation into motivation. The same face that made him a target as a teenager would eventually become one of the most recognizable faces in entertainment. And his mother, Dolly, was no ordinary parent. Outside the home, she was a force of nature. She was heavily involved in Democratic Party politics and became an outspoken activist for women's suffrage. She was even known to chain herself to City Hall during protests. But inside the house, things could be very different. Dolly was constantly busy, and when she was home, her relationship with Frank could be extremely difficult. She reportedly belittled him, and some accounts claim that she physically abused him as well. There was also a darker atmosphere surrounding the family. The Sinatras were rumored to have connections to organized crime, and during Prohibition, Frank's parents operated a tavern in Hoboken. With alcohol illegal across much of America, questions naturally followed about where their supply was coming from. But that tavern also played an important role in Sinatra's future. It was there that he first discovered the thrill of performing. He would climb onto the player piano and sing for customers, collecting a little pocket money from the men drinking at the bar. Music quickly became more than a childhood hobby. When Sinatra was 15, his uncle gave him a ukulele. He began bringing it to family gatherings and performing whenever he had the chance. But he was growing up during the harsh aftermath of the Great Depression, and becoming a professional singer didn't sound like a realistic career to most of the adults around him. Even some of his teachers saw little potential in him. One teacher reportedly told him he had no real talent for anything. Sinatra, however, wasn't interested in accepting that verdict. He was determined to prove them wrong. School didn't exactly go according to plan either. Sinatra was eventually expelled from high school for what officials described as general rowdiness. His entire high school career lasted just 47 days. His father was furious and deeply disappointed, but disappointment at home wasn't enough to stop him. Sinatra began bouncing between ordinary jobs while taking whatever singing opportunities he could find around New Jersey. Then came a job at a roadhouse in Englewood Cliffs that seemed like it could finally open the door he had been waiting for. Instead, it brought another round of drama. Sinatra already had a reputation for being difficult and ambitious, and some of the musicians around him quickly grew tired of his attitude. Then he met a young woman named Toni Della Penta. For a while, it looked like romance had entered his life, but Sinatra was also seeing another woman, Nancy Barbato. Soon the situation became ugly. Della Penta and Barbato became involved in a bitter feud, and according to accounts of the time, the emotional stress became so intense that Della Penta suffered a miscarriage. The situation eventually turned physical. After Della Penta attacked Barbato, Sinatra ended their relationship and chose Barbato instead, claiming that he wanted to be with her because he believed she was pregnant. She wasn't. Della Penta was furious. She went to the police, and Sinatra was arrested on a charge of seduction, a crime that existed under very different laws and social standards at the time. Della Penta later found herself in trouble as well after another confrontation with Barbato. But Sinatra had already made his decision. Later that year, he married Nancy Barbato. It was hardly the beginning of a fairy tale marriage. Today, the name Frank Sinatra brings to mind a completely different image. The sharp suits, the effortless confidence, the sophisticated voice, the cool, controlled presence. But that wasn't how Sinatra first became famous. The secrets behind Sinatra's rise. During the 1940s, Sinatra was viewed as something very different, a skinny, slightly awkward young heartthrob who drove teenage girls into hysterics. His image would eventually change dramatically. The transformation came in the early 1950s when Sinatra signed with Capitol Records and began working with legendary arranger Nelson Riddle. Together, they helped create the sophisticated sound and unmistakable persona that would eventually define Old Blue Eyes. But before Sinatra became the ultimate symbol of cool, he had to survive the man he feared almost as much as his own mother, Tommy Dorsey. Dorsey was one of the biggest band leaders in America when he hired Sinatra in 1939. Sinatra quickly became a major attraction, but life inside the band was far from peaceful. He constantly clashed with drummer Buddy Rich, and his relationship with Dorsey was even more complicated. Sinatra had signed an extremely restrictive contract that gave Dorsey a huge share of his future entertainment earnings. The young singer realized that if he wanted to become a star on his own terms, he had to find a way out. And by then, he had something that gave him leverage: his fans. The reaction to Sinatra was unlike anything most performers had ever seen. Young women screamed, fainted, crowded outside venues, and chased him wherever he went. Years before Elvis Presley and the Beatles created similar scenes, Sinatra was already experiencing the kind of fan hysteria that could turn a concert into chaos. His early music was very different from the smooth classics that would later define his career. But the big band years gave him a national audience, and Sinatra quickly realized that he was ready to leave the band behind. So he made a risky move. He challenged his contract with Dorsey. Against the odds, Sinatra won. Dorsey was reportedly furious. He allegedly told Sinatra that he hoped the young singer would fail, and Dorsey didn't simply forget about the breakup. He continued criticizing Sinatra publicly for years. But around the same time, something much darker began following Sinatra. Rumors started spreading that organized crime had helped him escape Dorsey's contract. One version of the story claimed that a mob associate had threatened Dorsey with a gun and pressured him into releasing Sinatra for almost nothing. Whether that particular story was true remains disputed, but the rumor fit a larger narrative that would follow Sinatra for decades: his alleged connections to the mafia. Even before Sinatra became a solo superstar, his publicist George Evans understood the power of fan hysteria. Evans reportedly held auditions to find girls who could scream the loudest, then place them around venues to increase the noise and make Sinatra's performances feel even more explosive. It was essentially manufactured excitement, but Sinatra probably didn't need much help. His real fans were already completely obsessed. Some reportedly broke into hotels after Sinatra had checked out just to touch the bed where he had slept. Others grabbed at his clothes and tore pieces from them. And then there was the infamous 1944 riot at the Paramount Theater in New York, where tens of thousands of fans reportedly gathered outside because they couldn't get into the already packed venue. The hysteria surrounding Sinatra was becoming impossible to control. Then came another controversy. Despite playing heroic sailors in several films, Sinatra faced accusations that he had avoided military service during World War II. One rumor claimed he had paid a doctor $40,000 to declare him medically unfit. The story became so widespread that the FBI investigated, but investigators found no evidence that Sinatra had bribed anyone. The actual explanation was far less dramatic. His damaged eardrum, combined with psychological issues he was experiencing at the time, led authorities to reject him for military service. Still, the draft controversy was only one part of the Sinatra mythology. The mafia rumors were much harder to escape. Sinatra wasn't simply accused of knowing criminals. He openly associated with prominent underworld figures and was photographed with members of organized crime. In 1948, he even performed at the wedding of Willie Moretti, a powerful underboss in the Genovese crime family. That made it difficult for Sinatra to convince the public that every connection was purely innocent. There were also claims that his relationships with mob figures helped his career. Exactly how much those connections benefited Sinatra is still debated, but there is no question that organized crime figures appeared in his social circle, and those relationships would eventually create serious problems for him. Comedian Jackie Mason, for example, claimed that after making jokes about Sinatra during a performance, he was later confronted and beaten by gangsters in his hotel room. Whether Sinatra had anything to do with it was never established, but stories like this only added fuel to the legends surrounding him. And then there was Sam Giancana, one of the most powerful figures in the Chicago outfit. Giancana was reportedly known for wearing a sapphire ring that symbolized friendship, and according to accounts, one of those rings had been given to him by Sinatra himself. By this point, Frank Sinatra was no longer just a singer. He was becoming something far more complicated, a superstar surrounded by fame, controversy, powerful friends, dangerous rumors, and a past that refused to stay buried. What Frank Sinatra did to Nancy Barbato Sinatra is truly cruel. The 1940s were an absolute roller coaster for Frank Sinatra and his wife Nancy. There were incredible highs, but the lows were brutal. By the time the couple moved their family from New Jersey to Hollywood, they already had 3 children together. They were starting a new chapter in a place where Frank hoped his career would reach another level. Instead, the move brought even more trouble into their marriage. Frank began cheating on Nancy regularly, getting involved with one woman after another. Then, in 1945, he started an affair with Marilyn Maxwell, a Hollywood starlet and longtime friend. This one wasn't just a quick fling, it lasted for months, and eventually Nancy discovered the truth in a way she never could have expected. One day, she noticed a beautiful diamond bracelet sitting inside Frank's car. Naturally, Nancy assumed it was meant for her. Rather than confront him immediately, she said nothing and waited. Days turned into weeks. The bracelet never appeared. Then came the couple's annual Christmas party. Nancy walked into the room and suddenly saw the bracelet again. This time, it was wrapped around Marilyn Maxwell's wrist. For Nancy, the mystery was over. She immediately ordered Maxwell and her husband to leave the party. Then she turned her anger toward Frank, threatening to end the marriage for good. Frank eventually admitted to the affair, although he tried to make it sound less serious than it really was. Nancy decided to forgive him, but forgiveness didn't mean the problems were gone. The story of the Christmas party quickly spread, and before long, Sinatra was becoming a regular headline in the tabloids. Some stories were true, others were rumors. But either way, his reputation for womanizing was becoming impossible to escape. First came the exposed affair with Marilyn Maxwell. Then came rumors that Sinatra had become involved with Lana Turner. Turner denied the relationship, but by then, the damage was already done. For Nancy, the constant humiliation took a heavy emotional toll. In 1946, while the marriage was falling apart, she made the painful decision to terminate a pregnancy. Later, the couple managed to find a brief period of stability, and Nancy gave birth to their daughter, Tina. But even a new baby couldn't repair what had already been broken. Frank continued seeing other women. Then, in 1949, the tabloids caught him on a romantic vacation with Judy Garland. Garland and Sinatra had been close friends for years, and she was going through a particularly difficult period in her life. She had recently suffered a nervous breakdown and spent time in the hospital. There was another complication, too. Garland was still married. The situation looked terrible, but somehow even that wasn't enough to end Sinatra and Nancy's marriage immediately. Still, Nancy's patience was running out, and soon an angry wife would become the least of Sinatra's problems. Away from the chaos of his personal life, Sinatra was known for having very particular tastes, especially when it came to food. One of his favorite places was Patsy's, the traditional Italian restaurant in Manhattan. Sinatra became such a loyal customer that his association with the restaurant helped turn it into a famous destination. Over the decades, Patsy's would become a favorite among celebrities, attracting famous names from Hollywood, music, and literature. But behind Sinatra's polished public image, there was another side of him that very few people saw clearly. He struggled with severe depression. For much of his career, Sinatra was remarkably good at hiding his emotional pain. But when things became overwhelming, his moods could change dramatically. He could become angry, unpredictable, and extremely difficult to deal with. People around him sometimes bore the brunt of those outbursts. Sinatra also had an explosive reaction to criticism and negative publicity. Journalists, photographers, and publicists who crossed him could find themselves facing an angry and sometimes violent response. The irony was that these incidents only attracted more attention. The more Sinatra lashed out at the press, the more the press watched him. The more they watched him, the more stories they found. And the cycle kept feeding itself. Then Ava Gardner entered the picture. According to the story that later became part of Sinatra's legend, he first saw Gardner's photograph in a magazine and immediately became fascinated by her. From the moment they met, he was captivated. Gardner, however, wasn't immediately impressed. She eventually warmed to him, and the two began a passionate affair. But this relationship felt different from Sinatra's previous romances. He wasn't simply attracted to Gardner. He became obsessed with her. For Sinatra, being with Ava Gardner started to feel like something he couldn't live without. But getting her would come at a price. By 1950, Frank and Nancy Sinatra had been married for almost a decade. They had raised 3 children together and survived Frank's explosive rise to fame, along with years of infidelity and public humiliation. But Ava Gardner changed everything. When Frank finally admitted that he was involved with the Hollywood star, Nancy reached her breaking point. She locked Frank out of the house and contacted a lawyer. Then came one of the most painfully ironic details of the entire breakup. Frank and Nancy publicly announced their separation on Valentine's Day in 1950. After nearly 10 years of marriage, the relationship was finally coming to an end. With the divorce pending, Sinatra was now free to pursue Gardner. On the surface, it looked like he had finally gotten exactly what he wanted. But instead of becoming the happiest chapter of his life, the relationship quickly became another source of chaos. The tabloids went after Sinatra relentlessly. His private life was suddenly everywhere, and the constant coverage destroyed much of the public image he had spent years building. And the damage wasn't limited to his reputation. His career began to collapse too. The man who had once been one of America's biggest stars was now facing one of the darkest periods of his entire life. Sinatra's darkest family nightmare. Even after his divorce from Nancy, Frank Sinatra remained a deeply devoted father. But in December 1963, he was forced to live through every parent's worst nightmare. On the evening of December 8th, Sinatra's son, Frank Sinatra Jr., was kidnapped from his hotel room in Lake Tahoe. Then came the phone call. The kidnappers made their demands clear. They wanted money, and they wanted a lot of it. The ransom was set at $240,000, which would be roughly $2 million today. They also gave Sinatra strict instructions. All communication had to happen through payphones. The experience affected Sinatra so deeply that he developed a strange habit that lasted for the rest of his life. He began carrying rolls of dimes with him everywhere, just in case he ever needed to make an emergency phone call. Sinatra gathered the ransom and prepared for the exchange. Thankfully, after about 2 terrifying days in captivity, Frank Jr. was released unharmed. But those 48 hours left a permanent scar on his father, and the timing couldn't have been worse. Sinatra was in the middle of filming a movie with the Rat Pack when the kidnapping happened. He was also still carrying the grief of another devastating loss. Just weeks earlier, President John F. Kennedy had been assassinated. Sinatra and Kennedy had once been close, but their relationship had fallen apart before JFK's death. Sinatra never got the chance to repair that friendship. Now, with his son suddenly taken from him, all of that grief came crashing down at once. The pressure became almost unbearable. Sinatra seriously considered shutting down the entire film production. Eventually, he managed to pull himself together and return to work, but the kidnapping stayed with him for years. There were also some bizarre details surrounding the case that made the whole experience even more disturbing. During the first ransom call, Sinatra was so desperate to get his son back that when the kidnappers demanded $240,000, he reportedly offered them $1 million instead. They refused. Eventually, authorities caught the men behind the kidnapping and they were convicted. The alleged ringleader later appealed, claiming he had been legally insane during the crime. In the end, however, none of the kidnappers spent especially long periods behind bars. For Sinatra, the entire ordeal was another reminder that fame and fortune could bring danger just as easily as they brought luxury. And luxury was something Sinatra was becoming very familiar with. During his Rat Pack years, he expanded beyond music and movies and moved deeper into the world of casinos. He became the owner of the Cal Neva Lodge and Casino, located right on the Nevada-California border. Under Sinatra, the resort quickly became one of the hottest celebrity destinations around. Marilyn Monroe visited, Lena Horne visited, Lucille Ball visited. For a while, it seemed like everyone who mattered in Hollywood wanted to be there. But then one person showed up who would change everything: Sam Giancana. Giancana wasn't just another celebrity guest. He was a notorious organized crime figure and one of Sinatra's longtime associates. Once authorities noticed him around the property, Sinatra's problems multiplied. The Nevada Gaming Commission was already under pressure to crack down on organized crime in the casino industry, and the FBI was watching Sinatra's connections closely. Suddenly, Sinatra found himself trapped between two worlds. On one side were powerful friends from his past. On the other were government authorities, determined to keep organized crime away from Nevada's casinos. Eventually, Sinatra was forced to give up his position at Cal Neva. The decision also effectively destroyed his longtime friendship with Giancana. Once again, Sinatra had lost someone close to him, and that pattern would continue. When Sinatra turned 50, he shocked the tabloids by beginning a relationship with a woman nearly half his age. Her name was Mia Farrow. She was only 21. Sinatra was already a global superstar, while Farrow was a young actress whose career was beginning to take off. But like many of Sinatra's relationships, this one quickly became complicated. Sinatra wanted Farrow to leave acting behind, and incredibly, she agreed. At the height of her rising career, Farrow walked away from the hit television series Peyton Place. Instead of building her reputation as a serious young actress, she suddenly became known primarily as Frank Sinatra's much younger wife. But then an opportunity came along that was almost impossible to ignore. Farrow was offered the lead role in a new horror movie called Rosemary's Baby. At the time, she had no idea how much the role would cost her personally. After marrying Sinatra in 1966, Farrow had spent roughly 2 years living the life of a housewife while her husband continued working. She was bored. She was restless, and when the chance to play Rosemary Woodhouse came along, she jumped at it. There was just one problem. The production schedule kept getting longer. Sinatra was furious. He had already wanted Farrow to abandon acting, and now her new movie was interfering with their marriage and with a project of his own. Eventually, the conflict reached a breaking point. While Farrow was still on the set of Rosemary's Baby, Sinatra had her served with divorce papers. It was a brutal moment. Farrow had reportedly considered leaving the movie because of the strain it was placing on her marriage, but she was also being encouraged to stay. A studio executive allegedly told her that the role could lead to an Oscar. So, Farrow made a choice. She finished the movie. Rosemary's Baby became a major success, and Farrow received nominations from nearly every major awards organization. The one major prize that eluded her was the Academy Award. Today, her exclusion from the Oscar nominations is still remembered as one of the more famous award season snubs of the era. There was also an ironic twist to the whole situation. Sinatra had once pushed Farrow to abandon acting, yet he had planned to cast her in his own passion project, The Detective. When the filming of Rosemary's Baby ran far beyond schedule, however, Sinatra reportedly lost patience. He replaced Farrow with Jacqueline Bisset and served his wife with divorce papers while she was still working on the movie. It was an incredibly cold way for their marriage to end. Still, Farrow later acknowledged that she had contributed to the tension as well. She admitted that she could behave immaturely around Sinatra, which only made their already difficult relationship more complicated. And somehow, after the divorce, the two managed to move past it. They eventually became close friends and remained on good terms until Sinatra's death. Of course, Sinatra's fame and enormous fortune created another problem. People began appearing from his past with claims that they were connected to him in ways he had never publicly acknowledged. Actress Ava Bartok claimed that her daughter was the result of a secret affair she had with Sinatra during the 1950s. Another woman, born to a showgirl in 1943, claimed Sinatra was her biological father. In 2000, she even legally changed her last name to Sinatra. Her claim was never officially proven, but she later received $100,000 from Sinatra's estate. Sinatra's final goodbye was heartbreaking. For all the stories about Sinatra's temper, his womanizing, and his sometimes ruthless behavior, there was another side to him that didn't always make the headlines. He could be remarkably generous to the people he cared about. When his friend, actor Lee J. Cobb, suffered a massive heart attack in 1955, Sinatra reportedly went all in to help him recover. He filled Cobb's hospital room with books, flowers, and food. He paid his entire medical bill and visited him every day, making sure his friend wasn't left alone during one of the most frightening periods of his life. And Cobb wasn't the only person Sinatra quietly helped. His relationship with Ava Gardner is another example. Even after their marriage ended, Sinatra and Gardner remained genuinely close. During the 1960s, when several Hollywood actresses were struggling with financial problems and being taken advantage of by people around them, Sinatra quietly helped Gardner manage her finances. Years later, when Gardner became seriously ill, Sinatra stepped in again. In the 1980s, he reportedly contributed $50,000 toward her medical expenses and urged her to return to the United States for specialized treatment. But Gardner was too frail to make the journey. She died in 1990. After decades of turbulent relationships, painful breakups, and headline-making affairs, Sinatra eventually found the woman who would remain beside him for the rest of his life. Her name was Barbara. She wasn't exactly new to the world of famous marriages, either. Her second husband had been Zeppo Marx, one of the members of the legendary Marx Brothers. Frank and Barbara remained married for 22 years, right up until his death. But their final years together were dominated by something far more serious than Hollywood drama. Sinatra's health began to fail. He faced heart problems, breathing difficulties, pneumonia, dementia, and bladder cancer. One health crisis seemed to follow another, gradually taking away the strength that had once made him seem almost untouchable. Through all of it, Barbara stayed by his side. Then, in May 1998, Sinatra suffered a massive heart attack. Barbara was there with him, urging him to keep fighting. But this time, Sinatra seemed to know that the fight was almost over. He was 82 years old. Later that day, Frank Sinatra died, the man who had survived a traumatic birth, poverty, school troubles, public scandals, broken marriages, mob rumors, career disasters, and unimaginable personal tragedies, was finally gone. He had spent much of his life trying to control the world around him, but in the end, even Frank Sinatra couldn't control the one thing that eventually comes for everyone: